Good morning everyone. I hope you had a really great week back at school and that you settled back in really quickly. Now, can you remember what we were learning about last week? We learnt about the control that Jesus had over nature, that he was so powerful that he could control the wind and the waves with just his voice. Today we're going to learn about another amazing thing that he did in the Bible. Before we do that, I want you to have a think about the 5 senses that God gave us. See if you can remember them all. You might need to pause the video to have a think and to talk with those around you about it. Now, the first one of these senses is, use this for it. Can anyone think about what it could be? Yes, you're right. It's sight. Now have a look around you and tell someone near you 2 things that you can see. I can see some books and some trees out of the window. The next sense I want you to have a think about is what we use our ears for. That's right, hearing. Listen really carefully and see 2 things that you can hear and tell them to someone near you. I can hear some birds singing outside the window and the washing machine going. Right, next we use our nose for this one. I wonder if you can think about what this sense is. That's right, it's smell. Now some smells are really, really nice and some smells aren't so nice. I wonder what your favourite smell is. Tell someone near you what the smell you like best. I really like the smell of fresh baked bread. It makes me really hungry just thinking about how good it is. Now, have a think about this one. Now, we don't use our mouth for this. We use something inside our mouth. We use our tongues for this. That's right, it's taste. Think about what your very favourite thing is to eat or drink, your favourite taste. Now, my favourite taste is probably anything sweet, something that I shouldn't eat a lot of, especially chocolate and ice cream. Now, the last sense, I wonder if you can work out what this one is. We use any part of our skin for this, and it's a bit harder to think of than the other ones. Did you get it? It's touch. Touch something near you and tell somebody what it feels like. Is it hard or soft? Is it smooth or rough? Does it feel warm or cold? Now, this last sense is really important in our story today. Jesus was near the lake, surrounded by people again, when a man came to ask for his help. Now, I want you to remember this man because we're going to learn a little bit more about him next week. And Jesus went off towards this man's house to help him, and people were moving alongside him. Now, he was absolutely surrounded by people. He was in a huge crowd. Have you ever been in a big crowd? Can you remember what it feels like? Now, we haven't done very much of this in the last year because we've had to keep our distance from people. But I want you to think back to a time when you have been in a crowd. It might be when you've come out of a busy cinema and you've just watched a film and everyone's crowding to try and get out of the door. It might have been when you've been shopping and near Christmas and it's really busy and everyone is trying to get through the crowds to buy what they need. What did it feel like? Was there lots of space to move around? Probably not. It probably felt really crushed and really busy. And there were probably lots of people knocking into you and squashing you. Sometimes it's not a very nice feeling. And that's exactly what it was like around Jesus at that time. There were people knocking and barging and pushing their way through just so they could get close to Jesus as he was walking along towards this man's house. Now there was a woman in the crowd who had been unwell for 12 years. That's longer than some of you have been alive. She had a problem with bleeding, and she had been to every doctor that she could think of and spent all her money trying to get better, but nothing had worked. Now she thought if she could just get close enough to Jesus to touch his cloak, then she would be healed. She really believed that that's all it would take. She had been hearing about the amazing things that he had been doing, and she knew that he had great power. And she thought if she could just get close enough to touch him, then he could heal her. She must have had a really strong belief and a big faith to believe that Jesus could heal her just by touching his clothes. Now, she managed to get close enough to him in the crowd and touched his cloak, and at once her bleeding stopped. Jesus turned around straight away and asked the crowd, "Who touched me?" Now remember what we talked about before, about what it was like to be in a crowd with lots of people pushing and barging and knocking into people. Jesus was convinced that he would know exactly who had touched him. But his disciples tried to explain to him, "Jesus, there's so many people here and they're all pushing and they're all knocking into you. There's no way we could know who had touched you." But Jesus kept looking around to see who it was who had touched him. The woman realised she'd been healed, and she came forward and knelt down at Jesus' feet and told him about all that she'd been through, about how she'd been unwell for so long, and about all the doctors that she'd been to, and about how she'd spent all her money trying to get better, but nothing had worked. And Jesus said to her, "My daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your trouble." In that crowd of people pushing and knocking into him, Jesus had felt that one lady's individual touch. Isn't that amazing? He had known that someone had touched him because he had felt some of his power leave him. And she had had such great faith that that was all it would take to make her better. And Jesus told her, "Your faith has made you well." So that great belief that she had in him was what was healed her in the end. This shows us that Jesus cares about each and every one of us. In that big crowd of people bumping into him, he felt that one touch. And that shows us that in all that's going on in the world, we are still important to Jesus. In the big crowded world of coronavirus problems and lockdown problems, your problem is still important, and Jesus still has time for you. The woman had tried absolutely everything she could to get better, and nothing had worked. She had been hearing about the amazing things that Jesus had done, and she believed that Jesus could heal her. And it was this faith, this belief, that did eventually heal her. Now, when we pray and ask Jesus for help with things, do we really believe that he can help us? We should believe it because we can read in the Bible about the amazing things that Jesus can do. He has control over nature, over wind, over waves. He can heal people. And so our problems are easy for him to solve. Nothing is impossible for him. And it doesn't matter how big or how small our problems are, Jesus will always have time for us. So this week, when you're struggling and you're finding things tricky, bring your problems to Jesus and pray to him. And remember, there's nothing that's too hard for him. He can help you, and you are so, so important to him. So remember that this week, and try and remember to bring any problem to Jesus. Doesn't matter how big or how small. Just pray to him and ask for his help. and believe that he will help you. Now, there are some activities on our website for you to have a go at, so enjoy some of those, and I would love to see them on the Facebook page this week. Have a great week. Goodbye.